mic check, please.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Ducks Unlimited podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Mike Brazier.
I'm your host, Katie Burke.
I'm your host, Dr. Jared Henson. And I'm your host, Matt Harrison.
Welcome to the Ducks Unlimited podcast, the only podcast about all things waterfowl. From hunting insights to science-based discussions about ducks, geese, and issues affecting waterfowl and wetlands conservation in North America. The DU Podcast, sponsored by Purina Pro Plan, the official performance dog food of Ducks Unlimited. Purina Pro Plan, always advancing. Also proudly sponsored by Bird Dog Whiskey and Cocktails. Whether you're winding down with your best friend or celebrating with your favorite crew, Bird Dog brings award-winning flavor to every moment. Enjoy responsibly.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Ducks Unlimited podcast. I'm your host, Matt Harrison, and today we have with us Mr. Doug Larson. Doug, how we doing?
I'm great, man. Good to be here.
Absolutely. So Doug is a host of Ducks Unlimited TV and does a phenomenal job with the TV show that DU puts on, and we thank you for that. But we're going to dive in and learn a little bit about the history of Doug. So if you can just give us a little introduction about yourself. We're going to go over some stories and some history about how you got started and such, but just give our listeners a little bit more about yourself.
Well, my history with DU probably started in the early 2000s. I've always in the outdoor travel business, and I did a bunch of marketing, writing, and copywriting and stuff like that. And I changed jobs, and at one stage I woke up and I thought, I got a little time. I'm going to write a duck hunting book.
Wow.
And I wrote a duck hunting book, and like they always do in the movies, you go to the Kinko's and you make like 19 different copies of this thing. And so I walked out and I had these big sheets of paper and I mailed them all off to all these oddball publishers. And I thought, it's going to cost me another 69 cents to send one to DU. And I sent one to DU, and believe it or not, the only people that called me back were DU, and they said, "Man,
no way.
What a great book!" It was called "Don't Shoot the Decoys." That was my first book. DU published it, and a couple years later, I did another one and followed up with that. And DU published that one as well. So,
wow.
Through the book, through the concept of or through the process of doing the books, then I started, doing some features for the magazine.
Yeah.
And then, at one stage, I got the job that I always wanted was to get to write the back page of the magazine. Since I was 12 years old, in my basement bedroom in Minneapolis, Minnesota, I taped up, copies of the magazine on my walls. And I thought, man, this would be the job. I'd like to write about duck hunting and duck killing and cool duck stuff.
Yeah.
And, I woke up one day and I got it, and it's been that way. And then, the TV show came afterwards. And, since unfortunately Wade Bourne passed, some years back, and I got on the TV show at that time, and that's been a whole nother sort of adjacent wild ride as well.
Wow. Now, was that a goal of yours too, to become a part of the DUTV, or was that something that just kind of happened?
It just kind of happened. It was just it just happened that I was, I could sort of talk on camera and shoot ducks at the same time. And, so I called Fred and said, man, what do I do? And he helped me out with that. And, I talked to Mark Pearson, some of the older hosts, and sort of figured, found my way.
Wow.
But I was always comfortable with it. So
yeah. Well, you clearly enjoyed duck hunting at a young age, but how did you kind of get the start? Did your dad hunt, grandfather hunt? How did you get involved in that?
Nobody hunted.
Do what?
Nobody hunted. I grew up in Minneapolis, and I hunted in southwestern Minnesota on my grandparents' farm.
Wow.
And I was I would say, at that time, I was the first of the media generation where I was influenced by what I read in Outdoor Life, what I read in Field and Stream, what I read in those magazines. And I thought, man, these people have got interesting lives, and this sounds like something I want to do. And I just, it was obviously pre-internet and pre-everything.
Yeah.
And so what I got from the printed page. Unfortunately, my family was very tolerant, and they figured, the way parents do these days is like, this is a safe place for this kid to be. Like, take a gun and go out in the field and come back and I just learned. And I eventually got with some cousins that hunted in southwestern Minnesota, and we hunted together, and all through high school, all through college. And then I got more into the fishing industry, and I guided for some years up in Alaska. Then I started going to South America, guided there. I've had a fun ride. Been a good show.
Now, what's your favorite thing to hunt or fish?
Oh, I only hunt ducks.
That's it.
That's it.
You don't chase a turkey?
No, I could care less.
Really?
Right in the middle of fishing season I love to fish. I don't like to fish. I love to fish.
Just as much as duck hunting?
Yeah, but I mean, turkeys in Pennsylvania are walking across the road. They're everywhere. They're in the trees. I got my yards full of them. And I get it. I talk to enough guys who really know about turkey hunting, and I think that I would probably like it, but that's the last thing I would do is get that turkey needle in my arm at this stage. I got enough stuff that I spend money on that I don't want to fool around with it. But I think the turkey thing is really interesting because they like to play the game. And that's the thing about duck hunting, right? I mean, I like mallard ducks, and, Fred and I were talking earlier about Fred Zink and I were talking about, being sort of a mallard snob. It's not that we're snobs about that duck. It's that mallards like to play the game that we like to play.
Yeah. And they do it right when they do it.
Yeah.
Back flapping.
And they can be convinced to go someplace that they were not headed.
Correct.
That's, to me, to call it those sparkle ducks and break them down, or sea ducks cross into the distance and just, and hammer on them and get them to start spinning. That's it. That's
Nothing
the whole
like
show.
It. So you said you didn't grow up hunting. When were you kind of first introduced to hunting, though? Like, when did you get to go on your first hunt?
I mean, this has been years and years and years ago. I would imagine I was, single digits, maybe 10, 11, 12, something like that. I mean, I remember being 11, 12 years old and hunting with some cousins that had a stock pond hunt in southwestern Minnesota, and we hunted together. And, they would come and pick me up as part of the deal. And I think there was some family pressure there, is like, look, if you guys are going to go, take this kid with you. And I, looking back on it, I sure appreciate that. I probably didn't thank them enough, but, that was where it started.
Wow.
We hunted pheasants and rabbits and everything else, because it was typical sort of more farm kid deal. But
wow. So now, how often do you travel with DUTV? Are you on the road a good bit? Or are you?
The great thing about having the three hosts, and the reason people always, I think, wonder why there are three hosts on DUTV, and the truth of the matter is, it's so that the three of us are still able to hunt at home.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we would literally be missing our home duck season. Yeah. So, and it's worked out great for me because I can typically get an episode or two in September, early October. Mm-hmm. Then I'm home in Ohio to hunt October and into November. Might make an episode or a trip sometime there, and then we're done. Yeah. A lot of times, or at least we're ice and then no ice. We're back and forth. Mm-hmm. By Thanksgiving.
Wow.
Early December at the worst. So then December, January, we're done. Our decoys are put away. We're all wrapped up, so I can do, anything in this, in the South that we want to do.
Wow. That is so cool.
And it gives you a long season. That's the thing that I love about it, is it really, I start hunting September 1, if we get an early teal season, September 1, and, we're able to go right till the end of January.
Wow. Now, where did you get to go hunt some this year? Were there any cool places you got to go?
Yeah, well, you'll see a really cool episode from Oklahoma, from Crash Landing. We did.
Oh, yeah.
We did there.
I've been there. Archie and...
Archie Bradley. Well, yeah, because you're a ball player, right?
Yeah, Archie Bradley and Mac.
I said this on camera, and I will say it again, because I think the coolest thing about Archie Bradley has nothing to do with baseball. He's just an amazing human being.
Great guy.
Amazing human being, and he's in the right business. He's a great, great hospitality. And, I don't get to shoot those little geese very often, so that was fun with tons of mallards. I did a really fascinating episode in North Carolina with a great couple of decoy guys, Jerry Talton and his buddy. We worked on that. And where else did I go? I don't know. All kinds of runs. He kind of runs together. Some of it on me.
So in Oklahoma, did y'all hunt cow ponds, the river, or what?
Little of everything.
Okay.
Little of everything. Cow ponds and the river. We hunted some dry ground. In fact, Ed Wall was our camera guy.
Oh, yeah.
Eddie called me called Guy Shepard, who's our producer, and said, "Hey, where are you guys?" I was like, "We're getting our rental truck." He's like, "Man, I'm going to send you a pin. Like, I need you to get here like right now. We're having a..."
I can just hear Eddie. You got to get right here. You got to get here right now. Come on,
He was all riled up. And I mean, man, we got in the field the first afternoon. I just smoked them. It was awesome.
Hunted dry fields.
Yeah, dry fields.
So you got to kind of experience a little bit of it all.
A little bit of everything, yeah. And then I hunted with Jack Hole, who's the new president of DU Mexico, at his place in Alberta.
Okay.
We've been back, hunted with Jack before, and he's just a prince of a man and a really fascinating man because he's Canadian.
Yeah.
And has been president of DU Canada. And is now DU Mexico, and so he's a continental man. I mean, he really understands the migration and understands the needs of waterfowl, top to bottom.
Yeah. And where did you get to hunt with him at? You said in Canada?
His place in southern Alberta. Yeah.
Was it special?
Pretty good.
Wow.
I mean, you can't have a bad trip to Canada.
Yeah.
Like it's just almost impossible. And it's just the thing about Canada is just trying to find that timing where you're on a fine line of. It's late enough so that the greenheads are green, but not so late. Because, I mean, I've been snowed out of Canada like October 10th.
Wow.
Oh, yeah, waist deep. Like, sorry, fellas, it's over. Like, that's happened.
Holy
So
cow.
it's that sort of, hopefully that you play the weather and catch, first couple weeks of October or last week of September and hit it right.
Wow.
But, man, I've never had a bad experience in Canada of any kind. And actually, I showed up in Canada on that episode. I hope you won't be able to tell when you see the episode. I was sick as a dog.
Really?
I literally left my house and I was like, man, I'm not right. Something bad is happening to me. I flew up there. And I called my doctor from the airport. I connected in Minneapolis and said, man, I need you to send me some pills. I'm not right. And he said, yeah, no problem. I'll send you antibiotics wherever you need. Where are you going to be? And I said, I'm going to be in like southern Alberta. He said, man, I can't send pills to Canada. He said, just go up there. And when you get there, go to like the
clinic,
go to the emergency room and they'll take you. So luckily the first day's hunt, Jack said, look, man, there's nothing going on in the morning. Let's get out. I've got this field with ducks and geese in it in the afternoon. We'll get a combo hunt in the afternoon. I said, great. Can I borrow a car? I got to go to town. Went to the emergency room, and it was like, yeah, we'll see you, but it's going to be like, your insurance is no good here. Oh. It's going to be about a $3,000 visit.
Do what?
Yeah. And I was like, I'm pretty sick, but I'm not that sick.
I'm not dying.
But the crux of the story is this woman was so sweet. The nurse, she said, look, there's a clinic down the street. It opens at 9:30, and they'll take walk-in people. So I walk over, and the clinic's next to the bakery. I kind of got a donut and sat on the bench, and I walked in there at 9:30. I sat there for 5 minutes, and they said, what's your deal? I explained my whole situation. Come on in. I went in, sat down with the doctor. As I'm talking to him, he's typing out my prescription, prints it up, and I said, where do I get this filled? He goes, just go back out in front. And the pharmacy was right there. I got the pills, started taking them. Man, 24 hours, I was 100%.
No way.
Yeah, people were awesome. And it's just, I could keep you up at night telling you great
stories.
Canada people stories. They're just awesome people.
Wow.
And there's so little hunting pressure up there now. I think that unfortunately, the Canadians have really, they're concentrated more towards Eastern Canada and people have moved away, I think, more from the land. And, if I literally don't think we heard another gunshot that wasn't one of our own in days.
No way.
And that's becoming more and more common up there.
Wow. Because at one point it was getting pretty heavily hounded.
It was getting pretty outfitted, but I think the way they have the sort of outfitters and zones and things set up now, it's pretty spread out. But and I talked to enough people, anecdotally, how'd you go? Well, I went to Canada. How'd you guys do? We did great.
Yeah.
I know that people are still going up there, but you don't. It's not like
everybody's in one part of the.
It's not like back in the day when you go to South Dakota, everybody that got off the airplane had an orange hat on. It was such a big part of the tourism experience that South Dakota's like you don't get that vibe in Canada at all. You're sort of the odd man out.
Yeah. Wow. Now, United States wise, what would you say one of your favorite places to hunt outside of Ohio?
Man, I would have to be. I just would say just because of productivity, in the last several years, Kansas, Oklahoma, any of those big square states in the West have got mallard ducks in them.
Wow.
I love Arkansas, and I will always love Arkansas. And some of my very best friends are in Arkansas. But I think Arkansas has got to right the ship in a way. We're really, I think, at a precipice of not. I want to say, like, I don't want to say, as it relates so much to quantity as quality. I think we need to see Arkansas qualitize the hunting and hopefully focus on qualitizing the hunting going forward.
Yeah. Wow, that's so cool. You've done it just about all. We were talking about before you got on the podcast how you've been dove hunting. How many times did you say?
Well, I started. I got involved with this group in Argentina, and I've sort of been their U.S. office now for about 20 years, and we've got lodges down there for doves and ducks. We shoot some partridge and some other things as well, and we have a fishing side as well. We trout fish down there and in the Caribbean. So I'm pretty fortunate I get to go around. So, and finally I got my kids out of college, and so my wife and I are empty nesters. And if it wasn't for the fact that the air travel is just so arduous anymore, I'd do more of it. But
now, what's your wife think about you being gone so much at times?
She is extremely tolerant of my travel schedule. Wow. She is very, very tolerant, but she's got a very good business of her own that she needs to show up to every day. So if we can find somebody to babysit the dogs, I'm generally A-okay to go somewhere. And
so you've been successful in many different areas, from the business side of things to the DUTV host side of things to the writer side of things. You've been in this industry. You've been successful. You've done a good job. There's a lot of people, and younger generation too, that would love to be in that position, that would love to be in some type of outdoor role. I mean, you hear it all the time, whether it's through social media, through just the everyday talk with people. You hear people, man, you're so lucky to be in that role, man. You got so lucky how you get to travel and hunt. I've probably heard that 1,000 times.
Oh yeah, I'm sure you're a rock star in your generation. Absolutely, you got a cool job, man.
Well, I'm blessed for sure. I love it. Dee's been amazing. The people here. But, you've done a lot more than I have. You've accomplished a lot more than I have. Can you talk a little bit about what helped you get into the position you are? Is it the way you treated people? Is it, you found avenues just to get involved with and you took that and ran with it? What are some things that help you get to where you are today?
I would say this. I think that there's a couple of things. I think, first of all, I was a guide. For a number of years. So I understood the outdoors and guiding and hospitality. Yeah. And I learned it. And I was not really good at it, early on. And I remember, being a guide. I was in Alaska for a number of seasons. And I remember being a young guide, and I had people on a river that was just loaded with fish. And I put these two people in the boat. I think it was there's another guide with me, and it was two couples. And we went out in the morning, and there was never a moment when there wasn't a fish on.
Wow.
We were just taking fish off, and it was a river, and I was standing in the water, and they were in the boat. The fish were on and off and on and off, and they finally, about 11:30, 12 o'clock, said, "Man, can we go have lunch?" I said, "Absolutely." So we went to the shore, and we built a fire. We had a lunch, and I'm looking at my watch thinking, man, I got to get these people back out in the river because we can keep slamming them because this is just unbelievably good. And I didn't really realize it at the time because I was a younger guy and I was just I just wanted to put up numbers.
Yeah.
These people were on their vacation. They just wanted to sit on a rock, eat some food,
and
maybe
enjoy.
take a nap, just sort of breathe it in. And so I learned to become, to sort of read people that way, to become an empath that way and understand what people want. And I think it's no different than, people that tell you if you take a sales course, you sit and listen and let the other person tell you what their problem is, and then you solve it for them. Same thing.
Yeah.
That sort of deal. And the other thing, I think I just took chances, and I wasn't afraid to send writing samples to people. Maybe they sat there and maybe they closed the door in their office and laughed when they got it or threw it away. I don't know. But, I just threw enough noodles at the wall that some of them stuck. And a lot of that was, a lot of the stuff, I started writing, not, because I really grew up hunting by myself. I really didn't have, it wasn't like in the South. Now I understand the community in the South. You can sit in a duck club with 12 or 15 other guys and people will say, well, we use this many decoys and this is what was going on. I didn't have any feedback. When I started writing, I just did it because I was really moved by what was happening to me. and I wanted to know if other people felt that way.
Yeah.
You know, it's sort of selfish in a way, I guess, if you think about it. But that was the way it started.
Yeah.
Is, you know, I wanted to know, you know, when I was in college, you know, I was very fortunate. There were lots of girls around, and I was thinking to myself, you know, I could go out with this really pretty girl on Friday night, but if I did, I mean, I got to meet my friend Jay in the bank parking lot at 3 a.m. tomorrow, because we're going to go hunt this place out in, you know, Montrose, out in western Minnesota. And I thought, am I the only guy that like prioritizes this hunting experience over the possibility of having a relationship with this like incredible looking woman? And so I would just write about it, be like,
wow,
and just see what happens. So anyway, I could talk for hours about goofy stuff like that.
That's awesome, though. And that's one thing, you know, that you said that I've kind of took into, you know, is look for those opportunities, you know, and pursue it, whether it be, you know, sending in a bunch of stories and, like you said, them shutting the door and laughing. I got kind of my start that got me to where I am today was through photography, you know, but to get me to where I was, there was a lot of bad photos taken, you know, and the thing is just staying persistent with it and really realizing like why you do it. Like I took photos because I loved it, and that's why I stuck with it, you know, because there was a ton of photos that were really bad. And I'm sure the same for you, you know, you stuck with it because you loved it, though. You loved the outdoors, you loved telling the story. Looking to this day, you're still, wasn't it the latest magazine that DU put out? You had a story in there or a part of the magazine.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, you stuck to the course and you didn't give up on that. But you enjoyed it.
No, and I've reached the stage now where, you know, when I write for that back page of the magazine, I think about what I want to say almost from a legacy standpoint. Mm-hmm. Like it's a little bit of a bully pulpit for me, you know. And I use the illustration of the last one I did about cooking ducks. Is that, you know, I think duck hunting shouldn't end with 6 duck breasts in a Ziploc bag.
Yeah.
You know, it should end with a whole duck that looks like a duck that should be cooked and celebrated like a duck. I just feel that way.
Yeah.
And, you know, whether it's that or whether it's gun safety or whether it's dog training or hunting with kids, you know, I'm hopefully that, you know, if you read between the lines, if you read my stuff closely enough, there's going to be some sort of a message in there that I want to impart to people that I hope will make the sport better.
Yeah. And that's you hear that so often, is really realizing it's not about just the numbers. It's not about just going out and taking the picture. Like you said, you made a good point on, we had a podcast previous to this, and me and you were discussing, you said, I would rather, you know, whenever I clean my duck, for it to look like a duck. I want to be able to utilize the whole duck and it not look like a chicken nugget. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And so it's realizing what it is that we've been given and taking the opportunity to appreciate it, you know. And the older I get, and I'm not going to lie, and I know that you'll say the same thing, we still want to go out and have a good hunt and a successful hunt and kill ducks. You know, that's still 100% what we want to achieve. But at the same time, you appreciate the things, like you said, in between the lines too, versus the overall.
And I can't remember, this goes back to somebody's quote on fishing, and it's at least 100 years old. So I don't know if it was Robert Traver or who said it back in the day, but you know, you start fishing, you want to catch a lot of fish, then you want to catch a big fish, and finally you get to the stage where you just want to go fishing.
That's a good point.
And that's kind of, I've reached that stage.
Wow.
You know, I just want to go duck hunting, and you know, some of the things that we talk about, like hunting tactics and that kind of stuff, I resist, because you know, if I could go and sit with you and another buddy and somebody's dog in a blind and talk, and we kill a few ducks, I would rather do that than know that I could get in a kayak and sneak down a creek and with 2 decoys and shoot a limit or 2 limits, because it's just not as social.
Yeah.
You know, I really enjoy the social part.
So what do you think got you to that point, though? Do you think it was because you have caught a lot of fish, caught the big fish, and then you get there and you've done it and you're like, man, I enjoyed just going? Like, do you think it's because you have done it, or do you think it's just because you're old and wise and you've heard it?
I think it's because I'm old and wise and I've done it enough that, it's like the buck fever thing. I don't, and this is going to sound cocky, and I don't want it to sound cocky, but I think if you ask somebody like Fred the same question, when I put the bead on a duck, I expect it to die because I've done it
so long.
Yeah, I have so many repetitions. I'm surprised and
mad at yourself when you miss.
Yeah, and I'm embarrassed and flummoxed if I didn't. But it's just so when you get to the stage where your routine and your equipment and your dog and everything has become, sort of a habit.
Yeah.
That you don't get the buck fever anymore. Then I also think that that's important because you don't get the fever, but you still love it.
100%.
And I'm sure, I can give you this, I'm sure if you played college baseball, you don't need a sports analogy, but there is one, right? It's the same thing, like bottom of the ninth.
Yeah.
And you
3-2 outs.
Yeah, you got to execute.
Yeah.
And if you can't execute, I think some days I can't remember some of the episodes I've done, years back. Man, I can remember every duck I missed on that TV show.
Wow.
3. There's been 3 and a pheasant.
Are you serious?
Yeah, I think so. It's embarrassing that I know that. But it bothers me because it was lost opportunity.
Yeah.
I know we did this great show with some guys who were smoke jumpers in Washington State. These guys were super cool. Go back to YouTube and watch the episode. These guys were awesome.
A smoke jumper?
Yeah, these guys were smoke jumpers. Like basically their day job was like super cool. Like there's a forest fire here. These guys get in the chopper or get in the airplane, parachute in, and fight that fire on the ground.
So they're bad at the bone.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. You think like my insurance man he'd laugh. These guys were super bad. Anyway, I remember missing a pintail on that trip, and I'm like still so embarrassed about it. But we had a great hunt. It was great,
Yeah, but you remember.
I should be able to let go of that stuff, and I can't. Just drive me crazy.
Well,
who knows?
At least you've only missed 3.
Yeah, I've only missed a few that I can remember.
Wow. Well, we're gonna wrap up here in just a minute, but before we do that, we do have a good bit of young people that listen to the podcast, and we talked a little bit about what's some things that helped you get to where you were. But how would Doug Larson encourage that young person that really wants to get into the outdoor sector, that wants to make a living doing this? Because there's a lot of people, again, like I mentioned earlier, that they would do anything it took to be in the position that you're in, to make a living doing what you do, or to get to travel and waterfowl hunt, or get to be on TV. So how would you encourage that young girl or boy that's listening out there that's saying, I would love to end up in Doug Larson's shoes?
I tell you what they do. I honestly think that this is applicable to everything from duck hunting to big game fishing. Mm-hmm. You go to a marina, or you go to a sporting goods show, or you go to the DU Expo, you go to the typical big sports show that they have in a Midwestern city, and you just go and talk to people and be willing to go to wherever they are and do whatever they need done.
Boom.
And hopefully after a season, you'll be off, you'll stop washing boats, and you might be a crewman, crewing on a tuna boat, might be crewing on a billfish boat, might be an assistant duck hunting guide.
Yep.
And you're going to have terrible late nights and no sleep and mud and all that, sweat and toil. But that's how you start at the bottom. And that's how you get access to the people who are doing it. You start to talk to clients and understand, why they're there in the first place, why it's important to them that they've come this far to shoot that particular goose or that particular duck or catch that kind of fish. And then it just builds and builds from there. But I think to have credibility in the industry, you've got to have started someplace where you're outdoors 24/7.
Yep.
And you get to the stage where you're some sort of a guide and or roper or whatever it is.
And a lot of people too, you nailed it on the head, is like, you look around the industry and there's some people, but 99% of the people, they put in their time to get where they're at. You know what I mean? Like and I know that I'm young and I'm in a awesome position and I love it. But like I literally started out shooting for brands for free.
Mm-hmm.
giving them content for their stuff. And then that led to the next opportunity. Then Ed Wall messaged me and was like, will you come shoot with me at Crash Landing? And I went up there and filmed with him as an assistant shooter. And then that opened up a door to meet Sydney Wells. And then that opened up a door to do all these other things. And then I was shooting for brands and other things. And like you said, you got to start out somewhere. And it's not an overnight success thing. You're going to have to put in your time, and you're going to have to do things that you don't want to do.
Yeah, and I don't think it's, they used to call it the old boys network, and that's probably not as politically correct, but it's still it's basically networking.
Yep.
You need to network with people.
Yep.
And, my kids are all at that same age where they're networking with people every day. And the more people you know in the industry, the more opportunity there will be.
I was listening to something the other day, and it said literally, it doesn't matter what it's for, never pass up an opportunity to do something whenever it comes to business or anything like that.
Especially, I think, in your generation. I mean, in my generation, we were going to have, basically you had a job or two, maybe three across your career. They're talking about now people in their 20s and 30s are going to have 15 jobs across their career. And that if they don't have 15 jobs across their career, they're going to leave. You're leaving money on the table because you're missing the opportunity to move and earn more and continue to move up the scale. So, don't be afraid to just say you know what, this is going to be the year that I'm going to turn the lights off and I'm going to go manage a lodge in the Bahamas, or I'm going to go do whatever. And you'll get there. There are, I think young people are afraid of failure.
Yep.
But they don't understand that the employment business in this industry is like any other. We are going to fill that spot.
100%.
We have to. We need somebody to guide and cook and change the beds and do whatever. We need somebody to write the articles and do whatever. Someone is hiring. It might as well be you.
Might as well. It's like you said, networking. It's not what you know, it's who you know.
Mm-hmm. And if you get turned down, then say, okay, why did I get turned down from this spot? Because I didn't have this, this, and this.
Well,
then go out and get those three things. Yep. I wish that I had spent more time on technology 15 years ago, because now it's moving so quickly that I can't keep up with it. And I look at my parents' generation, they could barely, I remember when my parents, when they were in their mid-70s, they booked their first airline ticket on the computer. And I thought, wow, my Lord, travel agents just died. That was it. That was the end of travel agents. Remember, you won't remember it, but I remember back in the day, if you just wanted to fly to Cleveland, there was no computer, so you went down to the travel agent and say, I'd like to go to Cleveland on Tuesday, and I want to come back on Wednesday, and it was $169, and you bought the paper ticket, and you walked out of the office.
So you weren't going to Expedia and
no such animal. But when I saw my parents, who were not technologically savvy, buy a ticket online, I said, okay, the travel agencies are done.
I've got
and that's with now there are still obviously some around, but you look at them and they all specialize. Either they specialize in outdoors, fishing, cruises, nonprofit, bike rides, things like that. And they're, it's basically sort of a group thing. But for your generation, there's going to be so much more opportunity because you have so many more portals, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, et cetera,
Snapchat, LinkedIn, Twitter. Yeah. I mean, it really is nuts. But, well, Doug, thank you so much for taking time to hop on the DU podcast and to give us some of that knowledge that you've spent a couple years gaining.
I never thought I'd be the old guy, but now I'm the old guy, right? No, thank you. It's been great to be here. I really enjoyed my time with you.
Absolutely. We appreciate it so much. Thank you all so much to the Ducks Limited podcast listeners, and also thank you so much to our podcast producer, Mr. Chris Isaac. Take care and God bless.
Thank you for listening to the DU Podcast, sponsored by Purina Pro Plan, the official performance dog food of Ducks Unlimited. Purina Pro Plan, always advancing. Also proudly sponsored by Bird Dog Whiskey and Cocktails. Whether you're winding down with your best friend or celebrating with your favorite crew, Bird Dog brings award-winning flavor to every moment. Enjoy responsibly. Be sure to rate, review, and subscribe to the show, and visit ducks.org/DU Podcast. Opinions expressed by guests do not necessarily reflect those of Ducks Unlimited. Until next time, stay tuned to the Ducks.